In this dream, I was in the back garden to a house. It was, therefore, the subconscious, the place where all that is stored that is affecting us to this day is to be found. These are where all the unconscious agreements and emotional attachments do dwell, waiting to be acknowledged and released, if we should indeed wish to do so. Anyway, I was there with another individual. The individual I know on the physical level, but I won't reveal the identity. Also in the subconscious back garden was Duane. It must have been the subconscious of this other individual, as the experience was centered around, initially, the attitudes of this said individual. For the person was expressing their doubts as to Duane's authenticity. It was quite the tirade of accusation and character assassination. Duane would bear this abuse with patient, detached disinterest, as this person ranted and raved. As for me, I was there probably as a witness for what would transpire as the experience moved along. At this moment I was rather embarrassed, as I could tell this was not only the genuine Duane with the impressions I had, but he had, as he always does when you encounter a real guide or Duane, have that presence of purity and sincerity that is undeniable. But evidently you need a degree of awareness to discern this. If you fall too much into your personal self and disconnect from your real self and awareness, then what you encounter is filtered out with all your personal self-convinced ideas and considerations, as was the case with this individual. Anyway, not quite knowing what to do with myself as this berating continued, I decided to fly above the garden and around it just to pass the time. Probably the reason for my flying was to get above things, because as you step into another's subconscious, or any arena, you can become aligned with it, and so it perhaps would be harder to remain connected to my real awareness if I remained on the ground and in the subconscious environment of this individual. Duane also was floating above the ground at about the height of the house. Then Duane, rather than argue his case or explain himself, he simply demonstrated himself for what he was. He began to glow with immense light, almost obscuring himself. It was vibrantly intense, and the true essence of his real beingness could not be dismissed or denied. I imagine even the most rigid, self-convinced, unaware person could not fail to recognize the awareness that this demonstration confirmed, and it was so that this individual realized his error and was most humble in the face of his misjudgment. The entire subconscious area now bathed in the light of Duane's being. Duane invited me to join him. I was somewhat overawed also. I descended to where he stood and was with him. We both stood in the light of our beingness, and it is difficult to put some things into words, as they fail to afford justice. All I can say is that it was very real, and even an experience of how interaction occurs beyond creation in the true reality of the is, this being to being. It was a little overwhelming, and my personal self got a little over-emotional, as on the real side experiences, we do carry the personal self with us. Sometimes it can interject itself and get involved, and usually not in the best beneficial way, as the real self, if allowed to take the reins, tends to know and act in accordance with our best interests. On this occasion, then, my personal self, along for the experience, was unable to contain its emotional self. But Duane would remind me of the personal self, and that it was here and present, and such things are apt to occur. Anyway, standing with Duane, we would then proceed to remove blocks, emotional attachments, and agreements to ideas from the individual. He also invited that I assist him, that I could see how this was done, and allowed me to remove some of the individual's attachments, also with his supervision. I was a little apprehensive at first, in case I did it incorrectly, and maybe pulled out a wrong wire or something. I had an amusing inkling that due to an error of mine, the individual might awake on the physical, and find himself only able to walk backwards, maybe. But that's where the experience would end, with Duane removing agreements and attachments, and me as his willing assistant. So all in all, a very vivid and intense experience. Certainly one for comparative purposes, as the experience was far more real than anything here on the physical. Everything here so very dull and washed out in comparison. Comparisons being what allow us to recognize the true reality better. And certainly, standing with someone, being to being, in the true light of their being-isness, that certainly is something way and beyond encounters with individuals on the physical, and so a further comparison can be drawn. The individual was on their process of awareness, but must have become stuck with a few ideas, perhaps reaching a point in their process where it was becoming very real for them. It was becoming a trifle scary for their personal self. And so, out of fear, the personal self was becoming prevalent and making its fear known by attacking Duane, the one presenting this opportunity. That's what it means to get through ourselves, as we must release all our attachments and agreements that bind us to creation, that prevent us from standing real with the is, and that act as filters for our recognition of it. And so, as we proceed, we will hit endless stumbling blocks that are the ideas and attachments coming to the surface to be recognized and let go of. With a little perseverance and allowing and letting go, we will release them all, with help from the guides and the New You song. But some are harder to budge than others. but only as hard, I suppose, as we allow them to be, as we cling on to them. If we cling onto them too much and refuse to let them loose, but we still sing the new you song, and thus our intent is still to become more aware and supersede creation, then we have quite the tug of war, the battle between the real self and the personal self. And often then this may manifest as the personal self getting attitudes, resentments, and becoming accusatory. Maybe even to the extent that an individual gets stuck with an uprooted idea, simply can't let it go, and falls back into the personal self and life entirely. In this case, it seems, as we were in this person's subconscious, I would bear witness to this person's struggle with the little self. Also, I would be witness to the actuality of Duane's real being, his real awareness, demonstrated in this experience. As I say, with genuine guides and the genuine Duane, this state of being can't be duplicated, even if impostors seek to look uncannily like them. The frauds simply cannot replicate this real being presence. But with this individual falling so much toward his irate personal self, stepping out of his real awareness and the ears, this would more have obscured the real self-vision and the impressions that would have made it clear that he was mistaken. So Duane ramped it up a bit, that it would be impossible for anyone, even with no awareness, not to recognize Duane and the awareness that he is. And his extreme real light illuminated all the recesses of this person's subconscious, shining the light into all the gloomy corners, so that the ideas and attachments were better revealed, and it seems then the offer to remove them was ventured. This would be down to the individual to decide, as it is the free will of everyone to have, decide, and cling on to whatever ideas they wish. It seems the individual agreed, and it was so. Perhaps the agreements, ideas, or attachments that were the individual's current stumbling block were thus removed, and said person could continue on with their process, and an opportunity granted for me to assist with this procedure. I can't really describe what I did exactly, or what I saw. It was more impressions, as we were all immersed still in this tremendous light, but I knew I was doing this with Duane, almost like a novice electrician being shown the ropes. I was indeed privileged for such an opportunity to experience and participate in something new, and to bear witness and confirm again that Duane is indeed the genuine article, with no deceptions or agendas.
Our position, which is really cool and unique, aside from everything else that's going on in this world, is that yes, people use their literal self and what they've been used to. You know, even in the movies, when you see the so-called bad guys or the evil ones, many times there's this bright light that shines. That's because they purposely do that so that people are afraid of the light. And so, and it's not about being that, it's recognition. And I'm going to back up a little bit here when Paul, when I was back there too, and gave the spiritual exercises, and one of them was to, listen for the sound, look for the light. What most people didn't realize is that that was not the real light. It couldn't be. It had to be, which was really information starting, the light of information, kind of like what goes through files or these things into our computer. It's really a light or an energy. So the individual can first get information to graduate, to gradually understand. And so many people mistake this light for the real light and thinking whatever it is. But the real light is to be recognized. And so in this experience, which is really cool, thank you so much, very humbling, very, very humbling, and yes, very sincere. And that is that at first it's unsettling many times to people because they don't recognize what it is. This is where it becomes too much. And it is recognizing this reality. Now, this is what I call perceiving, all right? Now, Paul had his own term, and he used direct perception, all right, of this. But realistically, that's more in something, an idea or consciousness of creation. And because that's what Paul was presenting at the time, he was the babysitter to just kind of get things ready for people and baby them along. But now it becomes the true reality, because it has to be that for what we're experiencing here and how dark this world and how dark creation has become through all the eons. And we are in a particular creation here. There are endless creations, but we happen to be in this one right here, and it really doesn't matter. And so things are happening. So I see that that the individuals here that are going through all this unconsciousness, like this person here, it is worth it to take the time to see if they will step up. That's the idea. Something was seen there, that they would have the possibility, and you saw that too, how the agreement comes about. They must agree, they must decide, they must see it to be okay to make the next step. They must take the risk. And this is what this is. This is a real risk-taker position, to see something that, no, you cannot decide or define. It is that being to being, very real. And this is where it is far too real. But you're there, you're deciding it, you're seeing how this is taking place. And right now with what is going on with the world, and we're going into 5G and everything else, and we got poisons and HAARP and everything else are bombarding us in this human farming. It's do or die. So it's either step up and get past your la la land personal life, or come back again, because it's a twinkling of an eye and boom, you're back. And this life will pass fast. But very, very good, Kevin. Yeah, if you could, if you wrote that out, I'd really like to put that in this book too. That's just terrific. Very good, simple example. And yes, you are the witness. Very important person. And as people, again, I know people are struggling to have certain experiences, but it is the recognition that is the most important thing. It's not like, oh, gee, I want an experience with Rebazar or something. Yes, I point to Rebazar. I constantly do this. Yes, see what happens. But it is recognizing that reality. So it's just like a job you go to. It's more than, oh, gee, I got the job, and I'll just go to the job, and you just don't sit there and be duh. You just like do whatever. No, you learn to recognize what to do. And then from there, creatively enhance it, for yourself and others. That's why we're here. So, but again, most people are, chasing the thrills. They're not interested, etc. They just want what they want for the personal self, which is understandable. That's not good or bad. Nothing is negated. It's a matter of choice. So, people are looking for freedom. There is none here. Real freedom has to be recognized for what it is, and actually becomes more than you can even consider it to be, which is so cool.